So today I am going to be reviewing the Dreadbox Telepathy. The Dreadbox Telepathy is a full synth voice in a compact 10 HP module. It features an analog oscillator which can do saw and square waveforms with automatic tuning and fine tune. It also features a sub oscillator which can be mixed with the analog oscillator, and also a noise oscillator which can also be mixed in. There is a dual filter on board which includes a 24 dB resonant low pass filter with Oscillator FM and Noise FM, and also a 6 dB high pass filter. Continuing the analog signal path, the Dreadbox Telepathy also features an analog VCA and two envelopes, one dedicated to the VCA with velocity control and one loopable for low pass filter, pitch and pulse wave modulation. There is also one complex LFO on board the Dreadbox Telepathy that can be mapped to various parameters. It includes some sync options including free, key, track, BPM and BPM key modes. It also has LFO fade-in and features triangle, saw, ramp, square and random waveforms. The CV input can be mapped to all basic parameters in parallel with dedicated amount for each parameter. There is also options to have MIDI input, output and MIDI through, and this enables you to have CC messages coming in and out of the Dreadbox Telepathy, and also program change messages. You can also connect up to 8 telepathy modules to get multi-timbral chaining functionality using MIDI. The telepathy can also store up to 16 presets. The current draw is 107 milliamps, positive 12 volts, and 24 milliamps, negative 12 volts. The price is €242 excluding VAT. Please check the affiliate links below to check the prices in your region. There is also an option to buy a telepathy bundle, which is 6 telepathies, 1 psychosis, and this is contained in a 70 HP modular case. And the price for that bundle is €967 excluding VAT. Again, check the links below to see what the prices are in your region. So as you can see, the Dreadbox Telepathy is a feature-rich analog synth voice, and I've had this fin for about 2 to 3 weeks. I've used it on various different son ideas. I've created about 10 to 15 different sons out of it, and I also created a sound demo no talking montage, which will be uploaded this Friday or Thursday, and if you are in the future, then it's already uploaded and you will be able to see the link in the video description or somewhere on the screen. I'll post the link as well. If you like the sounds that I have created with the Dreadbox Telepathy and you would like to get a hold of the samples, I have created a sample pack which features over 75 different sample loops that I've created with the Dreadbox Telepathy, and you can use these in your own productions. If you'd like to get hold of them, then look at the link in the video description. That will take you to my Patreon, and if you sign up for a monthly Patreon account, then each week I will be uploading free samples and also presets and stuff that I've used in these tutorial videos. So I've titled this video as a mega review and also a mega tutorial, and that is because the content goes well over an hour, and that is because first and foremost I'm a teacher and it's a bit of a mixture of tuition and also a review as well. So I appreciate that many of you are not going to want to watch the whole video in its entirety. Maybe some of you are just here for the review portion of the video, so just skip to the chapters that are about the reviews, and some of you might want to know more in-depth features of the Dreadbox Telepathy and how to operate them. Maybe you already own a Dreadbox Telepathy, or maybe you're like me and you just like to know everything about products before you buy it. So it's quite an extensive video, but I feel like there's a lot of value in this video and you can just skip to the points that are more applicable to you and what you want to learn or discover. So let's quickly talk about the patch points on the Dreadbox Telepathy. So on the top left, you can see we've got the CV input. This accepts any external CV signal rated at plus 5 volts, and through the CV in menu page, you can actually assign the CV to any of the main parameters by setting each independent modulation amount. I'll show you how to do that later on. And then we've also got external input. So this accepts any audio signal. This signal gets mixed in with the oscillator at the input of the low pass filter. And what you can do is you can use the low pass filter, high pass filter and VCA plus their modulations to alter the behavior of the external audio. What you can also do as well is unmix the internal oscillator by turning down the volume of the VCA of the oscillator, and I'll show you how we can do that later on as well. That way you're getting rid of the oscillator and you're just allowing the external audio to pass through the filter, and then you could potentially use this as a filter box in a given moment without an oscillator for external audio. And then on the bottom, sorry, not the bottom, on the top, we've got audio out. So this is a mono signal going out for obviously the sound of the synth, but then also for an external audio passing through as well. On the bottom, we've got analog in. So this is for pitch and gate, so we can adjust the pitch and the gate using the analog in there. And then we've also got MIDI out, which can be used both as through and output. And these use TRS MIDI Type A inputs and outputs. So what are my thoughts on the patch points on the Dreadbox Telepathy? Well, first of all, I think the MIDI input is absolutely amazing, and it really opens it up for people like me using devices like Elektron Syntakt, Elektron Digitakt. It means that I can send multiple CC sources to multiple destinations on the Dreadbox Telepathy, and it really opens up that synth module. On the Eurorack side of things, I do feel a little bit sorry for the people that are only using Eurorack and not the MIDI capability, because we've only got one CV input. Now, this is me just being greedy. It's not actually a complaint. I would just have liked to have seen more CV ins, but I am aware that there is a lot of features packed into this very small module, so it's probably a case of not having enough room to put any more CV inputs. But on the flip side, the fact that you can send one CV source to multiple destinations, that is massive, and each one can have its own depth amount. I think that really opens up the synth for CV. If you're using MIDI and CV, then you're laughing, basically, because you've got a lot of controller. As far as the external inputs go, I think that's obviously great for Eurorack users, especially because you can just use that as a filter box as well as a synth voice. So you could turn off all the oscillators and just use the audio in for the filter. So I'm going to start with just a quick rundown of the analog signal path on the Dreadbox Telepathy. It goes from top to bottom. The top row is actually a modulation, so we're just going to look at the next 3 rows. The second one here with the hertz and the sawtooth symbols, that is the voltage controlled oscillator. And within that we have a noise oscillator, a sawtooth oscillator, a square and a sub oscillator. We can affect the tuning, and we can also affect the pulse width of the square oscillator, and these can be modulated using envelopes and LFOs. So once we get past the VCO, we then go into the low pass filter. So for the low pass filter, we have a cutoff using this slider here. We also have resonance, and we can also affect the filter cutoff using LFO and an envelope. We can also add in some noise frequency modulation and also some filter frequency modulation as well for the low pass filter. After the low pass filter, we have the high pass cut filter. So you can see here we've got the cutoff there for that one, and the symbol is the same as the low pass but the opposite way around. And then after that we have the VCA section. So this is voltage controlled amplifier. So this is the volume of the signal that's going out of the output. And this can be affected using an envelope. Analog signal path. Well, I think this is the feature that will keep me coming back to this tiny module. I really love the sound of the raw oscillators. Even if I didn't bring down the filter, just the oscillators alone sound absolutely brilliant. And I've noticed that when I'm playing with this thing, there is some slight kind of deviations in the oscillator pitch and the movement. I don't know if they put that in there on purpose or if that's just the circuitry, but I can hear it. It's not like digital oscillators and digital filters where they're very kind of they stay the same all the time. There's like a slight movement in the sound, and I really noticed that when I made the sample pack loops. As I was listening through to a 16-bar loop, I noticed that even when I wasn't kind of touching anything, there felt like there was some movement going on. And I think that for me is a massive selling point. The fact that it is very analog sounding and it's very, very Dreadbox sounding as well. And you can't complain with that. So what I'm going to do now is just go back to that second row, and we are going to take a look at the voltage controlled oscillator again in more detail with some sound examples. So to get to that section, what you need to do is use the left button to scroll through these 4 different LEDs. You can see the top one will take you to LFO, second one will take you to the VCO, and then we get the filter section, and then we get the amp or the envelope section. So what I'm going to do is go to the green one, which is VCO. And first I'm just going to demonstrate the waveforms. So if we use the keyboard option on the Syntakt, I can play the telepathy using MIDI channel 1. So what I'm going to do now is just show you the sawtooth, which is at the bottom of the slider. And then if I bring it to the top, we get a square waveform. If we go dead center, we get a sub oscillator, which is an octave down. And what I can do is I can mix either the sawtooth with the sub oscillator to get a thicker sound, or I can mix in the square oscillator with the sub oscillator. Really nice analog sound. I actually really love the sound of the telepathy and just the raw oscillators. There's no filtering or anything on that, and I just love the sound of it. So if we go to the next, let's jump to the fourth slider actually. So this is a noise oscillator. This is the fourth oscillator that we've got. And that independently can be brought up using mix volume there. And it's just great for adding more grit and more rawness to the sound, and just adds a bit more top end, especially if you like filtering it as well with a bit of resonance. Just adding a bit of noise in just makes it sound a bit dirtier, I think. So I often bring that up. And then if we go back to the third parameter and then bring the sawtooth or the waveform all the way to the top, we get the square waveform. We're able to adjust the pulse width for that square. Mixed in with a bit of sub, that can sound really nice. And obviously, as everyone knows, it's a great one to modulate. We can modulate that using an envelope or an LFO, which I'll do later. And then if we just jump to the first parameter, you can see we've got hertz, which is obviously pitch. So we can change the tuning of the oscillator. Obviously, we can also change the tuning on the keyboard as well. And that can also be modulated using an LFO or an envelope. So my thoughts on the oscillators is that I think they sound absolutely delicious. They are analog, they are buzzy, they are raw, they've got a lot of tone to them. I think they sound great even when you haven't even got the filter on applied, like you're not bringing any of the frequencies down with a bit of resonance. Just the raw tone of the Dreadbox Telepathy oscillators really does it for me. I will also say that I love the fact that I can blend between the sawtooth and the sub, or the square and the sub, and I find myself often using the square waveform along with some pulse width for the electro genre that I make. I think it fits really well. I also like the fact that we've got the extra noise oscillator, which is very crucial to just add in a bit of grit and dirt. Now, one thing that again, this is just me being very, very greedy, and there is a solution to this one. I would have liked to have been able to mix the square and the saw and also change the two pitches of those, but again, I'm being very, very greedy here, and the solution is to just buy another Dreadbox Telepathy, because then I've got two voices and I can pitch them off from each other, and I'm sure that would sound absolutely amazing. Maybe I'll do another review in the future where I put two telepathies together, or maybe even more. So next we're going to take a look at the basic parameters of the filter section. So as I said before, we've got a low pass filter, and we can change the cutoff using that first parameter. This filter is a 24 dB resonant low pass filter, and then we've also got the high pass filter, which we can sculpt away the low frequencies, and this is a 6 dB high pass filter. If we go to the third parameter, we've got resonance. This only affects the low pass, not the high pass. And I really love the sound, the acidic sound of this filter with a bit of resonance. One thing I have noticed, which can be a downside, but it is an analog filter, so they usually have this characteristic anyway. When you bring up the resonance, you really start to lose the lower frequencies, quite similar to Moog synthesizers. Now, it's not a massive problem. It's just that in the digital realm, like with the Hydra synth, you do have fat options, and also on Serum as well, where when you bring up the resonance, it maintains that sub or low end. Obviously, we're working in the analog realm, so it's a little bit of give and take with these things, and it's fine, you know, like bringing up that resonance, sometimes taking with a low, you end up with these like really nice kind of like acidic lead sounds, which I'll demonstrate later. So I kind of just work with it, and I like the sound of that. So yeah, if you go past the halfway point, it starts to self-oscillate quite a lot, and then you also lose level on the original oscillator, but that's not a problem. You know, it kind of really does take over the resonance, which is absolutely fine. We are working in the analog realm, as I just said. And then if we go to the fourth option, we have envelope amount. So what I'm going to do is just skip forward a little bit and just open up the VCF. So this is the timing of the decay of that filter envelope. And then if I come back down, let's just place the filter cutoff there, add a bit of resonance, and then we can just bring in some envelope depth amount there. So I think the analog filter section sounds absolutely brilliant. It pairs really well with the analog oscillators. I love the low pass resonance. I feel like you can get to some really nice acidic destinations with that filter resonance. And the fact that they've added a high pass 6 dB filter as well, I think is a great addition. And also the features of having frequency modulation and noise FM as well, they can really dirty up the sound and just add a little bit extra to the sound. My only gripe with the filter is that when you raise the resonance, you lose some of the lower and sub frequencies. Now, this isn't really a complaint because we are dealing with an analog filter here, and that is often the case with most analog filters, especially on products like Moog. I've noticed that when I bring up the resonance of the Slim Fatty, I lose the sub frequencies, or maybe with a 303 especially, you lose all of the lower frequencies. So I do understand it's a limitation, and it's kind of a balancing act. You know, every time you gain something in the analog world, you're also losing something as well. So my tip for that would be to just layer something in with the Dreadbox Telepathy. Maybe if you had two telepathies, you could use one to do the higher oscillator sound with the high resonance to get the acidic sequence going, and then just use a sub oscillator underneath, which is filtered, and that can just be your sub that sits under to create a thicker sound. In my case, making electro, I'll often just leave that as it is and just have the natural kind of removal of the lower frequencies, and then use a really long big electro kick drum. So yeah, there is ways around it. It's not a complaint, it's just a feature of analog filters. So now we're just going to take a look at the basic controls of the next section, which is the VCF and VCA section. I keep saying basic controls because we do have some shift functionality to access some extra parameters, but I'm going to leave that for after. So we're just going to look at the basics first. If I bring the filter down, add a bit of resonance, and add quite a lot of depth amount there, and then we go to the next section, we'll just focus on the VCF first. So what we've got is we have shape and we have time. So it's quite weird the way shape works, right? So shape, if you bring it all the way to the bottom, this will be no attack, just decay. So it will kind of look like a sawtooth going down, and you can hear it just going, it starts at the top and comes down like this. If we shift this all the way to the top, then we have just attack. And then if you put it in the middle, we have attack and decay, so it's more like a triangle shape. And then next to that, we have time. So it's a little bit different, a little bit unconventional to what I'm normally used to. And normally I'm used to having like attack, decay, sustain, release on the panel of a synthesizer. So this is a bit weird at first, but I'm used to it now. So with the time, you can really hear the shape of that middle location. So if you put it in the middle, you can obviously hear it go up and then down like this. If you come all the way down, you can hear it just going down. And if you go all the way to the top, it kind of cuts off at the end, right? So it goes up like this and then it drops back down. This way, comes down and off, middle. So it's a little bit unconventional, it's weird. We can access sustain and some other things, but we're going to come on to that a little bit later on. What I normally do, I mean, because I make like electro and techno, quite often I'll just add a little bit of attack in there, or I'll just be mainly having this right at the bottom for the shape and just adjusting the decay for like basses and things like that. What I'm going to do now is just go back to the filter section and bring the envelope amount all the way down, open up the filter cutoff and just reset them. So we just get the pure sawtooth coming through. And then what we can do now is just take a quick look at the VCA, which is exactly the same, but this controls the volume. So if I bring that down, obviously if I hold this, it will carry on until I let go. But if I bring this up a bit, you can hear the time acts as more of a release. What I tend to do, so when I'm programming the Syntakt, what I tend to do is go to the length note page, and when I'm programming something in, I bring that down to like 132, and then what I'll do is I'll just put a sequence in like this, and I'll use this as my note length for decay. Obviously, if I want to, I can go in there and make one of them longer, but I'll just set a sweet spot using the release there. And then with this, it's exactly the same as before in terms of the shape of it. So basically at the bottom, we've got top to bottom, so like a sawtooth, take it all the way to the top. Obviously you have to hold it down for that one. We've got attack, and then in the middle, we have that attack and decay. But you'll notice that we get the attack. To get the attack, we have to hold it down. Then to get the decay, we have to release it. So what you can do is a little bit of attack and then release. My thoughts on the VCF and VCA section is that they sound great. They go from quite nice and snappy to also having kind of nice shaped releases as well. I find that when I create a sequence with this fin, it has a really nice shape to those envelope generators. One thing I will say is that obviously when you first start using this fin, it is a little bit unconventional, the way that it's set up with the shape and the time. I'm not used to that. I'm used to having attack, decay, stay and release, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of working. Obviously, they've had to pack a lot into this small module, so that is the way that they have done it, to get two envelope generators into a 10 HP module. So you can't really complain, and you start to get used to it as well. It kind of simplifies the process a little bit for me, because I know that I've just got this the time fader. That's the one that I normally just use. I keep it quite short and snappy, use the time fader, and it makes it really simple for me. If I want to add some more sustaining, then there is a shifted function, which we're going to cover later on in this tutorial / review, and I'll go over that and show you how to do sustain. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to the top line, and we're going to take a brief look at the basics of the LFO section. So with this one, you can see we've got rate, we've got LFO shape, we have the so that looks like it should be speed of LFO, but it's not. That is the speed of the LFO, that's the wave shape of the LFO, and then these are actually depth amounts. So it's just quick, easy access to send the LFO either to pitch of the oscillators, or you can send it to the filter, the low pass filter. So I'll demonstrate both of these, and we'll go through the different wave shapes, and then once we've done this, we'll start to look at the deeper controls using the shift function, and also some of the menu options as well on the telepathy. It is quite a deep synthesizer module. For the size of it, the fact that it's so small, there's quite a lot embedded into this module. So what I'm going to do now then is just quickly demonstrate an LFO on the pitch of the oscillator. So if I just hold a note and then start to bring up this one here, you can hear that it's affecting the pitch. And if we bring the rate up, so this is actually a triangle waveform at the bottom. And if we bring it up to the next one, you can hear we've got a saw down, and then we get a ramp, which is more like the inverted version of a saw. So it's going up with attack. And then we have a square or a pulse, which is on off. And then we've got my favorite, which is sample and hold, which sounds great on filters, filter cutoffs. Also when it's synced as well to a pattern, it can sound really cool. So the next one I'm going to do is just show you the same again, but using the filter. So let's just bring that filter down a little bit, add a bit of resonance. Let's go back up. So that's the depth amount again. And then what we can do is change the speed. And then we've got the same shapes again. sounds great using it on that. And we can also add these in together, so I mean you can also change the pitch as well as the filter at the same time. The LFO section on the Dreadbox Telepathy, again, a plus for me. The fact that it's got all of the wave shapes that you need, including my favourite, which is sample and hold, I think is great. That's what I want to see on an LFO. And the fact that you can have the LFO free running, or you can sync it up with external MIDI devices, again, is a massive bonus. We're going to go over the shifted capabilities later on in this review, and I'll show you how we can access different sync modes, including BPM and BPM sync. There is also obviously the destinations on the front panel for pitch and filter, which are the most go-to destinations for me when using a synth LFO, and there is some deeper accessibility as well when it comes to destinations. Again, with the shifted functionality, we can actually send the LFO to different places, and I'll show you how we can do that. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper on the parameters of the telepathy. So we're going to access the shift page functionality of the telepathy, and I'll show you another layer of parameters that we can affect using the shift button. So by holding this down, each of these parameters in the different sections, they have some extra functionality attached to them, which are very, very useful. When I first started playing with this before reading the manual, I was like, yeah, it's pretty basic. It's pretty basic synth. You're quite limited to what you get on the front panel. But then after I found out about the shift function, I was like, right, so it can actually do a lot of the things that it was missing, or seemed to be missing when I first played around with it. So we're going to start where we are now, which is on the LFO page, and we're going to take a look at the first slider. I'm just going to go through each of the sliders on each of the pages and show you what they do. So the first one is LFO fading, and this refers to the time that it takes for the LFO to start modulating after a played note. So what that means is you kind of have an attack on the depth amount. So what I'm going to do is let's use the filter as the demonstration for this. If we hold the shift function and bring it to the bottom, this is its default state. And as we start to bring that up, listen to what happens. So you'll notice the higher I bring that, I actually get less of the LFO modulation or the depth amount being sent to the filter. So we get almost like a straight note, and then the longer we hold it, we start to get more of the modulation from the LFO. So let's just, so you can almost play it without any tuning being affected. But as soon as we hold it down, that sounds absolutely demented. So it sounds really weird, that. Right, let's bring that back down again. So we're going to reset that fade in, and we're just going to take off the pitch again. And the next one that we're going to take a look at is LFO mode. So this is really, really useful if you're using other equipment. Maybe you are using the MIDI input like I am instead of CV, and you're using something like a Syntakt or any Elektron devices or a sequencer, and you want to sync the LFO to another device. What you can do is you can hold the function button. Sorry, not the function button, the shift button. And then if you adjust the second slider here, I mean, it's quite hard to navigate because there's no feedback to tell you what option you're choosing. You kind of just have to put it in the right place. There is actually 5 options along this slider. I suppose you can look at it like this: option 1, option 2, option 3, 4, 5. You'll have to just keep playing and testing until it's right. Normally I'll leave this at the top, and what that is LFO modes, right? So sorry, I went a little bit ahead of myself there. These are LFO modes, and what that means is the different sync options. If you have it at the bottom, it's free running. So the LFO will run freely without being affected by a sequencer or a played note. If you go to the next one, then we get key sync. So key sync is where the LFO waveform always resets to its beginning when a new note is played. So every time I hit a note, it should do anyway. Let's try and see if we can get it to work. So actually, let me go to a different waveform. Actually, let me go back on here, because what I have done is There we go. I actually initiated an extra parameter there, which is to add an LFO to the depth or the volume amount of the noise. So I'll come back to that in a second. That sounds better. Yeah, let's just bring that cutoff back up. And then now we can clearly hear the triangle waveform affecting the pitch of the oscillator. So that gives us a good reference point, which can listen to what the LFO is doing. So at the minute it's free running. So as I press the notes like this, you can hear that the waveform is continuing no matter whether I'm pressing a note to reset it or not, because it's not resetting it. If we go to key sync, so that's working now, so I can hear that clearly. So you can hear, if I hold it, we get the cycle. Actually, let me bring that back down. We get the cycle of that triangle waveform. But if we hit it, it resets it. So that could be quite useful in certain circumstances. What we can also do is change it to key track. So key track is an LFO. The LFO cycle speeds up according to the pitch of the played note. So if we try and get to that, so if I listen out for it. I think that's it, right? So what should happen is, as I go up the keyboard, up the octaves, this should get faster. Tell you what we'll do, we'll go right down the octaves. Maybe not that low. There we go. So it should get faster. Yeah, it gets faster as I go up the keyboard. Not something I tend to use that often, but it's there if you need it. So what I'm going to do now is hold the shift down again and go to the fourth option, which is BPM sync. So if I just test this, I think it's changed there. So what it should do now, it should be in time. Let's just yeah, you can hear it. So instead of, when I'm changing the hertz, oh sorry, not the hertz, when I'm changing the rate of the LFO, so the speed of the LFO, before what would happen is you would get this continuous change in the speed. But now what you can hear is these kind of like jumps. So what it's done is it's divided that slider up into divisions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, 24, and 32. So we can get it in time. If I put a kick on the Syntakt, and we go back to track 8. Now it might be a little bit out of time. There we go, there's a kick now. And let's go back to this one. I know what's happened here. It's reset the input. There we go. So you can hear there it's in time in the sense that the BPM is in time, but it's not actually syncing. So what I tend to do is I go for the last option, which is BPM key sync. So what this does is it resets every time you hit it, but what you can do is then use notes like this. If I put, I need to take the keyboard off, sorry about that. Right, so if I put a note or a trig on the 1 and then just bring that length amount up to 16. So I use that to reset the initial starting point of the LFO. And then it's always in time then. Right, so what I'm going to do now is look at the third and fourth shifted parameters. So what we've got is on slider 3, if we hold this and bring this up, we get a depth amount, and this depth amount is for LFO pulse width amount. And obviously this will only work if we are on the square waveform. So I'm going to go to the second row, change the waveform to square. And what we're going to do is adjust that pulse width there using an LFO. So what I can do is hold this down and start to bring up parameter 3. And let's change the waveform to the triangle. And this can sound really nice, so let's just go back to that. So I often add a little bit of that in, and if we go back to the waveform, a little bit of sub-oscillator. So the fourth slider is LFO noise amount. So if I hold this down and just start to bring up the fourth parameter with the shift option enabled, you can hear that the noise oscillator is being modulated. So the actual amount of it, so if we go to the second row, the volume here, that's being modulated by the LFO. So it can be quite useful. So now we're going to take a look at the VCO section again, and we're going to look at the extra shifted parameters in this section. So the first one, slider 1, is to do with tunings, and I obviously just leave it on the default state because I'm using MIDI input rather than using CV in. So those of you that are wanting to use this with a Eurorack system, this is quite useful. What you can do is you can hold the shift function and you can go from plus 12 semitones quantized all the way up to the top, and then you get full range unquantized values of 8 octaves. I obviously just leave it here. It means that my notes are quantized. I'm not using CV. It's all done with MIDI, so it's absolutely fine. I just leave that where it is. And I also just want to apologize that I am doing this review with Elektron gear, and I'm not doing it with a Eurorack system because I don't actually own one. But I think it's pretty useful, you know. There's guys out there that probably overlook things like this and think, I can't get that because I'm not using Eurorack. Well, you can obviously using like a little module like this, a little box like this. You could put 2 telepathies in there, and you've got 2 oscillators that you can blend together, or 2 synths that you can blend together to get different variations on the pitching of the oscillators. So it's useful, you know. It's a really small little synth, and you can use it without a fully fledged Eurorack system. So I think it's quite cool that we're doing it this way. Let's take a look at the second, third, and fourth sliders. So the second slider, when it's shifted, we get LFO to wave amount. So this is obviously the wave. And then what we can do is, if we hold shift, we can send the LFO to that slider. So let's just change the rate. So you can hear it cycling through the waveforms. So that's pretty cool. What I'm going to do is just bring that back down again, and then we're going to take a look at the third slider. So the third slider is for pulse width amount, pulse width modulation, but not from the LFO, actually from the envelope, which is really, really useful. So what we can do is we can bring this up. Now, at the moment, it's not doing anything because obviously we need to go to the square waveform. And you can hear that's now being affected. And I've just remembered it's not actually this one. You have to use the VCF envelope. But which is quite useful though, because if we set up the filter with some depth amount, like this, and then we change the time, I think it sounds pretty cool like that. Let's just adjust this a little bit. Find a sweet spot like that. And it sounds quite unique. I kind of like that sound. So what we're doing is we're opening and closing this like this. So obviously at the top, it's really thin sounding. And then what we're doing is we're just opening it like that and shutting it back down using the VCF time. So then what we can also do is we can go back to the oscillator section and just mix that with a bit of sub-oscillator. That sounds pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is just bring that third parameter shifted, bring that back down. Let's go back to the filter section and just reset all of this stuff. There we go. And then just put that back on sawtooth. So what the fourth slider does when it's shifted is it changes the VCO level. So VCO, voltage controlled oscillator, what we can do is can change the level of that. By default, it's in the center. Now, what I often do for most patches is I will bring it up to the top, because what it does is it starts to slightly drive the filter. It's not a lot. I wish they actually pushed this even further. I don't know if that's possible, but I wish they pushed it so you could really distort the filter. Like, I'm talking like make this unit red hot just by destroying it to its limits. Obviously, I'm sure they have pushed it to its limits, but I would like a little bit more out of it. So you can hear we can turn the VCO off, which can be useful, because what you might want to do is just use this as a noise oscillator for whatever reason, or maybe you just want to kind of use the filter as an oscillator without the actual oscillator coming through. So that's why it's useful. But also it's useful because you can drive it as well. Actually, let me just bring that filter back down. There we go. Right, yeah, so hold the shift button, and normally it's around here. What I can do is I can push it, and I'm just going to turn it down here. Let's see if we can listen to it saturating or driving. Maybe if we bring the filter down like this. Slight difference, not a lot, nothing compared to what it'd sound like if we pushed it into the effects drive. Obviously, it's not a drive as such, not a saturator or a distortion or anything like that. What you're doing is you're just increasing the gain that's going into the filter, and it's actually driving the filter. I just bring it up all the time because obviously I love distorting or driving stuff. Any little extra bits of saturation I can get out of equipment, I normally push it as much as I can. So yeah, that's quite useful. I find myself on most patches bringing that up. It's also a good way of just adjusting the volume of each patch as well. So next what we're going to do is take a look at the third section again, which is the filter section, and we're going to take a look at the shift functionality of this section. So let me just go back and try to reset everything. Yeah, we'll start there. Right, so let's take a look at this then. So what we've got on the shift functionality of this page is we have filter tracking on the first slider. So if we just bring this filter down like this, you'll notice that the cutoff doesn't change when I change notes. But if I hold this down and change that, you'll notice that let's go up one. Let's get it quite deep sounding like this. There we go. You'll notice that the filter opens as you go up the octaves or the notes. If we turn it off again and we just go back down, now if we try and do the same, sounds fine for the first octave. But as we go into those higher registers, we can no longer hear the higher notes. So this is really good if you have created a sequence that is maybe bass, lead, and higher notes. So sometimes I do that. I'll create like a bass sequence that has some higher notes in. You won't really hear the higher notes as much if you've got the bass notes quite deep. So then what you do is you just use the tracking amount. The more you add in, the bigger the changes on the cutoff will happen as you go up the octaves. So if you go all the way to the top on the tracking, it will open up a lot as you get to the high notes. If you just bring it down to maybe there, it will slightly open up. And what you've got to try and do, it's a bit tricky, you've got to try and find the sweet spot. So let's look at the other three sliders in this section using the shift control. So for the second slider, we have FFM, which is frequency modulation for the filter frequency modulation, and this is using a VCO triangle wave to modulate the low pass filter cutoff, and it sounds like this. Obviously, you need to kind of, let's maybe add a bit of resonance in there as well. So it sounds kind of buzzy and dirty. This obviously works a lot better once you've got a sequence going. Once you've got a patch going with some modulation and stuff, then you start to bring that in. It adds a little bit extra to the sound, and I'll demonstrate that later. So what I'm going to do next is just make sure all these are kind of turned off, and then we'll take a look at the third one. So the third one is NFM, which is using the noise oscillator to modulate the low pass filter cutoff. This one can really sound kind of dirty. It's like adding in some noise, but with a different flavor. It's a much dirtier version of noise. So if we go to the noise, see how that's quite clean? But if you use the noise to modulate the filter, it has like a really nice character, I think, and it can sound great. Again, once you've like dialed everything in to a patch, you add a little bit of that. It sounds quite cool sometimes. The next one that we're going to look at is one that I don't use that often, but it's great if you like creating drums and stuff like that, and that is on the fourth one we have envelope pitch amount. And what it basically does is, same as when we sent the LFO to the pitch, what we're doing this time is we're just sending the time. So this VCF here, we're just sending that to the pitch of the oscillator. And these things are usually cool when you combine them with other stuff. So if we add a bit of depth amount to that filter, and we add some resonance, so let's go to the VCA section now and take a look at the shifted parameters. So the first one I want to talk about is sustain options. So on slider 1 and slider 3, what we can do is we can adjust the sustain for the VCF or the VCA. So all sustain is if you can just see there, it's that little point after the decay. So you've got attack, decay, and then you've got sustain, and then you've got release. So what that means is if we use this on the amp, I can kind of show you how this works. So obviously we've got time there, and we've got shape. What we can do is we can adjust the sustain portion. So sustain is when you're holding a note. I am now in the sustain phase of that envelope. So if I hold the shift function down, I can change the volume of it like this. And I've just adjusted the wrong thing there, so let me go back to the top. So yeah, normally this is kind of at the top, but you can adjust it using that. And so we've got that also for the VCF as well. It's just on the 1, and then for the VCA it's on the third slider. Now slider 2 and slider 4 do some different stuff. So slider 4 actually puts the telepathy in a drone state. So what drone state means is it activates or deactivates the drone mode, and it sets the VCA to open constantly like this. So we just get a constant note going with no sequencer or any trigs or anything, and it just gives us a constant opening of the VCA. So we've always got the oscillators coming through the output, which can be quite useful in certain circumstances. If you've got this in a Eurorack case and you just want to kind of program something in without sending it anything, you can just bring that up and you can hear what the telepathy is doing. And then the other thing that we've got is on slider 2, we've got VCF EG loop. So what this does, it activates or deactivates the looping of the envelope. So this is pretty cool actually. So if I just turn that up, in fact, let me go and turn it off again while we just set up the filter. So we've got open and closing of the filter using the envelope amount. So the VCF is now affecting the cutoff. And then what we can do is if we turn this on, it loops it. So it loops the envelope as if it was an LFO. So that's your depth amount. You can kind of think of it as an LFO now. It's like an extra LFO. We can change the time. As we move up, it'll be slower. And as we move down, it will be faster. And then changing the shape will give us a triangle, a saw, or a saw up. So we've kind of got an LFO, an extra LFO there, by using the loop. Obviously, when you do that, what you're actually losing is you lose it. Well, actually, you're still kind of getting it. You can still open and close the filter, but it's quite cool, actually. I like that. I don't use it that often, but I might start using it. It's pretty cool. Yeah, you still get open and closing the filter, but once it's closed back down again, it's just going to reset and you're going to get that. It sounds like I'm pressing the note like this. So the shifted parameter function for me is very, very welcome. And I think without the shifted parameters, we would have ended up with a very simple synth voice rather than a full synth voice. It would have just been another 10 HP synth module with limited features. So the fact that they added the digital shifted parameter accessibility, for me, I think was a very, very smart move, and the way that they've implemented it is very good. Without it, we would have ended up with a 20 HP module, or maybe even a 30 or 40 HP module to get all of those parameters on the front panel. The other option I could see would be an LED or LCD screen, but then again, that would take up more space on the panel, and maybe we would have seen less features on this module. So I will say one thing, the gripe that I've had with it is obviously in the beginning stages of playing around with this thing, you don't know what the shifted parameters are. There is nothing on that front panel to tell you. There's no symbols or anything like that. Maybe I would have liked to have seen some more graphics on the front. Again, I am very aware that it's a very small module, and to fit extra graphics on that thing, it would have started to look very, very messy. So what I did was I just printed off or put the manual on my desktop while I was playing around with this thing, and then if I wanted to use some of the shift capabilities, then I would look at the manual either on a piece of paper or on my screen, and then I would basically go to that parameter and access it. Eventually, you start to remember exactly where those shift parameters are, so eventually it won't be a problem. Now, if you've got a Eurorack that is absolutely massive and it's taking up a full wall and you have to remortgage your house to buy it, then I would say that you're not going to remember those shifted parameters. As you start to navigate around other modules and you come back to that thing, you're going to probably forget what the shifted parameters are, where they are, and how to access them. So I would say having a manual for the early stages just on the wall somewhere while you get used to the shifted parameters, I think that is a very, very wise choice. But yeah, for me, I would have just liked to, I mean, I'm saying this and I'm looking down at it, it's like there's no way that you can really fit any more graphics on that front panel, or even like an LED screen. Maybe we just lose the Telepathy logo. Then you could maybe try and fit an LED in there. But I'm being very cheeky here because I understand Dreadbox have gone to a lot of effort to make this thing. They've put a lot of features in it, and I don't want to sound like I'm whinging because I'm really not. I think it's great for the size of it, the amount of stuff they've put in it. I think you can't really grumble with that. You've just got to work with the limitations, that's all. So what we're going to do now is go over the menu section. I'm going to show you how to operate the menu section, what's available in the menu section, and just basically how it works. So if we click the right button and this starts to flash, we are now in menu mode, and you can see we've got save, we've got load, CV in, and CCs. So let's just take a look at the save options first. We have two options available in the save section. And what we could do is we can select bank preset, and then we can save the preset that we've just made. 16 presets to me, for like a live rig, using this in a live rig, it's not a great amount of presets, but I suppose it's fine due to how complex this thing is. It's not massively complex in its sound design, so I could probably get away with creating 16 patches, and then on the Syntakt, any extra little kind of values or CCs or programming would be done on the sequencer. Just the initial setup of like a bass patch or a lead would be done on here, and the rest of it, as I've done previously on my sound demos, I would use the values in the CCs to create like extra elements to that patch using the Syntakt. So to save a patch, what you do is you first select the bank by using this slider here. So that's bank 1. You can see that if we go here and it goes white, we've got bank 1. And it's like a slow flash. We've got bank 2, bank 3, bank 4. Each of those banks has 4 preset slots. So you can see at the moment it's on the top. If I bring it down, this will flash even faster to say that we are now on bank 1, preset 1. That's bank 1, preset 2, bank 1, preset 3, bank 1, preset 4. Let's go to bank 2 now. You can see the blue is slowly flashing. And we've got bank 2, preset 1. Rapid flash means that we're on bank 2, preset 2. So if these are overlapping each other, you get a rapid flash. And then we've got 3 and 4. I like the sound of that, rapid flash. I'm going to use that for a song then. Right, so what we can do then is we can save this crappy patch that I've made, because there's not really much going on. We can save that into a slot. So in the first 8 or 10 slots, I've actually saved some really cool presets for the sound demos. Don't want to overwrite them. So what I'm going to do is go to bank 4, and then we're going to go to slot 4, which is slot 16. And then to save it, what you do is you just hold this down until that side flashes, and now it's saved. And then let's go to the load section now. And what I'll do is I'll load up some of the presets I've made, and then we'll see if we can load that one that we've just saved as well. So the load section works exactly the same. You choose your bank and you choose your preset. So if we go to bank 1, preset 1, hold this down, it loads preset 1. If we go to preset 2, load that one. Preset 3. Preset 4. You get the idea. Some of these sound very basic actually, because like I said before, most of the magic of these presets is going on using CCs on the Syntakt. Let's just load one more. So we'll go bank 2, slot 1, so that's preset 5. Load that. Yeah, this sounds so boring without all the effects and everything. And then if we try to load the one that we just made, or the one that we just saved, so we need to go bank 4, preset 4, which is preset 16, and we're going to load that one now. And that's saved in there. One thing I will say with this system is when you first start using this, well, this is in my case anyway, what I started doing was saving over presets that I just made, or loading presets when I was meant to be saving presets. And that is just down to getting used to the system and how it works. It's the same with Elektrons, I mentioned in this earlier. Same with the Octatrack, especially when you first get it, you lose stuff. You have to try and get used to using the system. But as long as you're careful with it in the early stages, you shouldn't really lose anything. What you can actually do as well is you can initialize a preset. So this is preset 16, which we kind of made earlier. And let's say if I just want to get rid of all of the programming and just initialize it. What you can do is you can use slider 4. So you go to the load page, you bring up slider 4 like this, and it just turns all the lights on like that. And it's not done it yet because I need to hold this down. So you can see now I've initialized it. It won't overwrite it, so I can just go and load it back up again. So we've got it back now. But like I said, we can slider 4 all the way up like that until it lights up, initialize. We can initialize it, and if we wanted to, we can actually go up and save that into that slot as well. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the third row in the menu, which is CV in. Now I do apologize again because I'm not actually using a Eurorack modules with this. I'm using MIDI from an Elektron device. That's because all my devices are pretty much set up to be MIDI rather than CV. Apart from the Hydra Synth, I could have maybe used that for the CV in. So I'll just try to explain it the best I can to the best of my knowledge, using also the manual as well. Now, I've read the manual through and through, and the way this works, I think, obviously I need to test it, is pretty cool. And you can do quite a lot in terms of how many destinations you can send this signal to. So let's say if we send a step sequenced modulation amount into the CVN or an LFO, and we want to send that to multiple destinations, what we can do is we can go to the third option on here, which is the CV options, and then we can use the sliders to send depth amounts to any of the parameters within this visual grid here. So what you do is you navigate through using the left button. So let's say if we want to do the filter cutoff, we go to the third page, and then what we can do is simply just bring this slider up, and that will be depth amount. So that'll be like a little bit, and then we add a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, all the way up to full. Now, if you want to add more depth amounts, then what you can do is obviously, like, let's say we want to add some to the resonance, maybe you want to add some to the wave shape, maybe you want to add some to the noise, maybe you want to add some to the envelope timings, like that. I think that's how it works. It doesn't seem like there's a limit on how many destinations you can do, so that makes it extremely powerful. The downside is, I think it's slightly a downside. I mean, for most people it probably won't be, but I would love to have seen more CV inputs, but maybe I'm just being very, very greedy. I mean, it's a 10 HP module, so you can't really grumble with that. In my case, I could potentially use CV in and MIDI CC messages as well, and that would really open up the telepathy. So there is one more thing to add to this. Obviously, if you have gone absolutely ham on just like sending CV messages to everything, and you don't want to go back through and reset them all, what you can do is you can just hold down the menu button for 1 second and it clears all of those parameter changes that you just made. So let's look at the fourth page now, which is CC. So this is really straightforward and simple. Obviously, this applies to me using the MIDI input. So what I can do is, I've already set this up, and every time I turn it off and on again, it seems to have kept the same state of what I set up before. What you can do is you can engage or disengage certain messages from coming in or going out. So the first slider is CC input, so that's messages coming into the input. The second slider is CC out, so that's messages going out of MIDI out there. And then we've also got program change in messages coming into the in and program change messages going out. So program change messages is what I use when I change. So let me just put these on. So you can see, let me just go back. This page that I'm on now is channel 8, so I'm using this one here. And that is sending messages on channel 1 to the telepathy. But it's also doing program change messages, so if I play that, you can hear that we're on preset 1. If I go to pattern 2, it'll change. Now we're on pattern 2, which is a different sequence. I'm using a different preset. I can change that using this as well. So I'm scrolling through the presets on the Dreadbox. Obviously, once I get to 16, can't go any further. And it works really seamlessly, it works really well. So these are all the demos I made earlier, and as I scroll through them, it just kind of goes through the different presets automatically. And I've noticed there is no delay, like on the Hydrosynth, where when you change a preset, you have that kind of gap in the audio and it delays and resets. With this, you don't get that. It's really seamless. So if I wanted to, I could go through the presets really quickly like that. Just change that. So that's program change input coming into here, and that is the program change going out there. And to enable that, what I've had to do is I've had to not hold down, I've just had to go to the fourth page, and then you've just got to move each of these sliders past the halfway point into the positive. So if you want to enable CC in, you push that one up. If you want to disable CC out, you push that one down. If you want to disable PC out, you push that down. If you want to enable PC in, program change in, push that one up. So it's really straightforward, easy to use. Also, to change the channel, I've just left this on channel 1, but I actually have like a really intricate live setup with a lot of MIDI routings going in and out of different things. So everything's on its own channel. Channel 1 is actually taken up in my setup by the Typhon, I think. So I wouldn't want this to be on the same channel as the Typhon. So then what I would do is I'd want to change the channel of this. And the way this works is what you do. Let's see if we can do it now, actually. Let's say if I change this to channel 9, it's no longer going to respond now because it's on a different MIDI channel. Let's say if I want to put this on channel 9, what I do is I press and hold the menu button like this to engage MIDI lane. Let's just see if that's worked. I'm not sure if it has. Nope, it's not worked. Let me just go back. This is the first time I've done this, so. Or maybe you just do it like that. Ah, right, okay, yeah. So it's a lot simpler than I thought. I thought you'd hold it and then it'd start to flash or something like that. So now we're on channel 9. If I go back to channel 1, this is no longer working now. So let's say I want to switch this to channel 1, hold it down, and all you got to do is just hit a key on channel 1. Now we're on channel 1. All right, so it's really, really easy to use. I thought it would actually flash, but you just hold it and press it. So there is another deep kind of menu option available, and that is tuning mode, which is obviously very, very, very useful. When I first got this, I wasn't really aware of the tuning mode, and I started making a pattern and realized this was out of tune with the Syntakt. But it's quite easy to sort out. So what you need to do is, once you're on the voice page, so not the menu, but the voices like this, any page, and then you press both buttons and it'll start to flash like this. That means you're in tuning mode. And you can tune, so you can do fine tuning manually like this. So you can manually tune, or what you can do is auto tune, which is super, super useful. While you're on this, what you do is you just press the menu button once to engage, and then all LEDs flash, and this will calibrate the scale and the tuning. So that should be in tune now. That's pretty much it. That's as far as I needed to take it. But you do have analog tuning as well, which is advanced. And while you're on the tuning page, you press and hold the menu button to engage analog tuning. The analog tune will calibrate the analog tune and scale of the oscillator, all the MIDI notes, and also the CV in offset. I don't really need to do that. If you need to do that, obviously you can refer to the manual. So the menu, I would say, is pretty straightforward and easy to navigate. There's not too much confusion there. Once you've kind of learnt the basics of saving, loading, there's not really much more you need to know, really, apart from obviously initialize presets. So there's like 5 functions that we need to use quite often. I would say preset saving slots, I would have personally liked to have seen more, but again, I'm just being very greedy. I think 16's fine if you're working with another MIDI device, because what I have found is I could create like a bass preset that is maybe a sawtooth, and then I create another one that is square, and then I would be manipulating the parameters anyway using trig locking on the Syntakt. So the Syntakt kind of becomes a second layer of preset saving for me. So just having 16 presets for me is not really an issue the way that I've got it set up. But if I had this in Eurorack, I would maybe have liked to have seen more presets, or maybe I wouldn't actually, because what I would kind of do is the same thing. I would create a couple of bass patches, a couple of lead patches, and they would be starting points. So I would load up the starting point, and then I would kind of navigate from there. Or maybe you could set up presets with certain fins enabled. So like maybe you set up a preset that has certain LFO, like maybe you create an LFO that is a sample and hold. So the preset becomes a starting point of the functions rather than an actual proper preset like a bass or a lead. I would say presets are needed really for this because of all of the extra functionality using the shifted parameters. It's good that you've got preset saving so that you're not having to kind of menu dive as such, going through the different sections and reprogramming everything. You can just have a starting point every time. So yeah, 16 presets is probably enough for most people. For me, I would have liked to have seen more because I perform live and I'm always creating new songs. I would like to save those presets, but then again, I wouldn't know where they are because there's no LED. So again, yeah, I'm just being picky here. Obviously, I've got the Dreadbox Typhon, and that does have a screen. It has like a ton of preset slots. Obviously, that's a full hardware synth. This is a small 10 HP module. So again, not a complaint. It's just another little tiny limitation. So there is something else that I just want to touch upon briefly, but I'm not going to demonstrate it in this review because I only have 1 telepathy. What you can do is you can link up to 8 telepathies to create a polyphonic synth or access multitimbrality. Did I say that right? Multitimbrality, I think that's how you pronounce it in my perfect Hull accent. So yeah, it has the ability to link to other devices, and you can create like a massive polyphonic synth using 8 of these modules. And there's obviously a lot more stuff you can do with multiple oscillators, such as tuning them differently. Like you could put one in a 5th, 7th, create like a chord with 3 of these. There's just so many different options that you can do once you've got more of these in line with each other. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly create something using the Syntakt and the Dreadbox Telepathy. I'm not going to go crazy and create a whole song. Let's maybe put that at 127 BPM. I'm just going to go through the motions of setting this up and programming it, because obviously we've gone through all the technical stuff, but we haven't really pieced it together. I'll create one patch with the sequencer and this, maybe add some CCs that I've already set up, just show you how I would go around creating something on this. And then if you want to hear more of what this can do in specific genres, you can watch my montage demo, and that's got like 9 different patches that are created in electro, techno, and a melodic one as well. And you can really kind of hear how this works with drums and stuff. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to reset this preset by just initializing it, and then let's just bring the keyboard up and see what it sounds like. So obviously we're running this into a bit of delay and reverb there as well, which isn't bad. We'll keep that on. Yeah, we'll keep that on. And then what I'm going to do is just go to the sequencer and just randomly put something in like this. And then let's just start with the envelope VCA time. And then what I'm going to do is just set the oscillators up next. Let's go for a bit of a square and a sub oscillator combination. And let's maybe start to change the pattern a little bit. That will do for now. And then what I'm going to do is just start to adjust the oscillator like that. Let's go to the second page. That's for the VCA. I'm going to push that right up to add more kind of drive. And let's play around with the filter now. So what I'm doing there is bringing the cutoff down, adding some resonance. We need some depth amount. Obviously we need to set up the time like this. Maybe add some noise in. Now I think what we could do is if we go to the CC page, what I've done is I've already set some of these up. So if I look at my list on my notes, I can see that value 1 is the cutoff. So what I can do is my favorite trick on the Syntakt. Put it into live record mode, quantize, and just do this. Till I get something I like. So it's recording my automations. Let's get some a bit more going on. That's cool, we'll go for that. And then the second one was noise level. So what I can do is just turn it on and off like that. The third one was, oh yeah, cut off LFO mount. So what I can do with this is my favorite trick is to go to the LFO page and just change the sync settings so that it's in time and gets retrigged with this. And then we're going to go on the wave shape, we're going to go to sample and hold. So that's the random feature. And then I think the rate we can bring it down pretty much. And what will happen is so that randomizes it more. In fact, I don't even really need to use that because I can just do it on here. So the filter, just add a bit of random into the filter like that. So we're just getting a bit of variation, it's not always the same. And then what I've also got on value 5 is noise FM amount. So we can add a bit of this in on certain notes. Let's just have a little play around now. Let's try some of the extra FM amounts and stuff like that as well. What we could actually do is modulate the pulse width a little bit as well. So if we go to the LFO section, pulse width I think was on this, yeah, it's on this one, so it's the extra parameter on here. So that's using the random LFO as well. That's cool. Turn up the telepathy a little bit. That sounds pretty cool. Switch to a sub oscillator there. Just had a bit of drive for a laugh. Let's bring that up. A little bit too much drive there, but you get the idea. So it's really usable with like Elektron gear, especially using the sequencer, and once you start unlocking the telepathy a little bit more with CC or maybe even CV as well, it really starts to shine. I think what I like about this is the analog vibe of it, and also the raw sound of the oscillators, and the filter sounds great. So pros and cons. I've not written any pros and cons down. I'm kind of just going to reel them off the top of my head, what comes to mind when I think about this device. Obviously playing around with it 2 to 3 weeks now, I kind of have a really good idea of the pros and cons. So pros for me would obviously be the size of this fin. It is so tiny. If I got a Eurorack housing case like this, but if I just got like a small 10 HP one, that is 10 HP, and that would just like slot onto my live rig in a very small kind of space. In fact, I've got a slot right next to the Octatrack, which was a dead space that wasn't getting used, but that would actually fit into that. So I'd say size is a pro. I would say that the design is a pro, the way that they've kind of set it up. Once you get used to it, it's quite easy to navigate using the symbols, and the LED lights I think is great. It feels great as well. The sliders kind of remind me a little bit of the Typhon, but for some reason they feel better. Then again, my Typhon was secondhand and this is brand new, so maybe that's why they just feel a bit nicer and stiffer. So yeah, build quality is great. I like the design. I like the telepathy logo, if we're going to talk about the design. I also really like the sound of this fin. That's obviously one of the most important things of reviewing something like this. The analog signal path, the sound of the oscillators, the sound of the filter, all of that sounds brilliant. It's got a nice character and a nice sound to it. And even though I've got other synths like the Typhon, I've got the DB01, I have got the MAM MB33 Hydrosynth Syntakt, this still has its own sound, and I think it's great. I think it sounds really, really nice. So yeah, we've got sound quality, I think it's brilliant. The extra kind of functionality of the The shift function I think is a great addition because it's so small to add all of those extra features that are needed in my opinion. Without all of those extra features, this would have been a very simple synth module and I would have maybe overlooked it. So the fact that they've added some extra functionality in there is great. It takes a little bit of getting used to, that's probably a con for me, but then you just need to kind of learn it better. Look at the menu, work out where all of the extra options are and how to access them. Preset saving, again, a pro is that you can actually save presets on it. Con is that there's only 16 slots. Some would argue that's enough. For me personally, this is just my opinion. For me, I would like to have seen more. What else can we talk about? So other pros, obviously a massive pro for me is the MIDI input and output, which I've already mentioned. The fact that I can clock sync the LFO as well is a great feature. I like the fact that we have different oscillator shapes that you can mix in with the sub oscillator and also a noise oscillator. A con for me would be that I can't pitch those oscillators off from one another. Again, it's not really a con because what you can do is just, like I said, buy another telepathy and then you've got two synth voices there which you can pitch off from each other. So all in all, there's not many cons. I would say, actually, thinking off the top of my head, the biggest con for me would be performability. So I have done many videos with this fin, performing with it. I just don't find it as fluid, obviously, as using something like the Typhon or the Hydrasynth. And again, can't really complain about it too much because it's such a small device and you're losing, obviously, big knobs and stuff like that. You're losing all of that in replace for having such a small synthesizer in a 10 HP module. I would say sometimes like navigating through the LEDs, obviously if you go to like say the filter section and then you change the sliders for the filter and then you're like, right, and now I need to go and quickly just open up the decay of the VCF, then you move that again, but obviously you're kind of like trying to find out where it was at. So performing live, in a proper live performance in a set, it's a little bit fiddly for me. But if you're using this fin to kind of create tracks that you're going to record, or it's in a massive Eurorack case and you're setting up a big patch on the Eurorack case to create a son idea, maybe do a live jam, then record it in so you can create a track out of it, then it's not really a problem, to be honest. But yeah, I probably will use this live. I think I've created like 10 to 15 songs on it now, so if I don't use it live, then I'll be resampling those sounds into the Octa track. But I don't want to do that. I want to take this live and play with it. So maybe I'll change my mind on that. It is obviously quite playable. I have been playing with it like that. So maybe it's not a massive con, but I would just say I notice a difference compared to playing on the Typhon or the Hydrasynth. There's a bit of a difference there when it comes to reaching for certain parameters. Also, another big con as well, obviously Dreadbox can't change this now because they've already made it unless they do a revision 2. There is other things that I would have liked to have seen dealt with differently as well. Like, I want to reach for the filter envelope and the filter decay. I want to be able to reach for those three plus the resonance all at the same time. So maybe what I would have liked to have seen is the high pass filter, maybe somewhere else, because I would have liked to have seen VCF time on the same row as the filter. From a performance standpoint, that would make sense to me, because I find myself going between those two LEDs, so those two rows, I find myself pressing the button to go between them. If you're here and you're playing with the filter and the envelope, and then you want to open up the time, you press the button, you open up the time, then you've got to go 1, 2, 3 to get back to the filter, and you're just going back and forth like that. So that's where the big problem lies for me with performance. Now, if I had to stay on one single line through the performance, because I've already set the preset up, it won't be a problem. I just have my 4 sliders for that performance. Obviously, that's going to be different for everyone, so that's just my personal take on that. So that was my mega review and mega tutorial on the Dreadbox Telepathy. I know that this has been a very long tutorial, and also there's the the sound demonstration as well, which is about half an hour long. But I hope it's been useful and you've skipped to the bits that are relevant to you. If you buy in the Telepathy or you already own one, I want to know your thoughts on the Telepathy. Let me know in the comments section below. If there's anything you want me to cover and review in upcoming videos, also let me know that as well. I've got a lot of gear to hand here from my live rig. If you follow me on Instagram, which is Drum Live, you'll be able to see what machines I've got and I can review some of those. I've got things like the Bassel Bestie mixer, we've got all of the Elektron gear, DB01, Typhon, there's loads of stuff that I can review. So let me know and I will try to make those my next review videos. Also, I just want to repeat again, if you would like the samples from this video and also the sound demonstration video, you can join me on Patreon and you can download over 75 loops from the Dreadbox Telepathy. There's also affiliate links below. If you click on those and buy a Dreadbox Telepathy, that helps me keep this channel running. And if you would like to learn from me, I do have a lot of courses, presets and sample packs available on my website, jamesorvis.com. All the information for all of this stuff is in the video description below. And I will say it, do the like, subscribe, all of that stuff that helps me build this channel. So hope it's been good for you and you found it useful.